She was hanged from a tree by the man who claimed to love her. But what the lonely millionaire did when he found her in that silent forest changes everything. Prepare yourself for a story where love saves, wounds, and can even kill. Watch this story to the end. You'll be surprised by it. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel. We post videos like this every day, continuing. Silence had always been Emily Brandon's natural language. Not the empty silence of those who have nothing to say, but the kind full of inner whispers, of conversations with the leaves dancing on her bedroom window, and with the books she piled under her bed like secret treasures. At 20, she still carried in her eyes that diffuse light of someone who grew up too protected by love and too wounded by absence. The small town of Pine Valley, nestled among gentle hills in southern Vermont, was the exact size of her dreams. Cobblestone streets that lazily climbed up and down, colonial houses with their lovingly crafted eaves, the church square where ladies gathered after 6 o'clock mass to comment on others' lives in whispers that echoed louder than screams. It was there in this miniature world that Emily had learned to be herself. Her father, John Brandon, shaped wood with his calloused hands and the silent heart of someone born deaf, but who saw beauty where others saw only dead trunks. In the workshop that smelled of varnish and sawdust, he transformed raw pieces into furniture that seemed to have souls, and Emily grew up watching this everyday magic, learning that creation was born from the meeting of patience and love. John spoke with his hands, and she answered with her eyes, and between them existed a more intimate communication than 1,000 words spoken aloud. Her mother, Helen, left too soon, taken by a silent cancer that settled in her lungs like an unexpected shadow. Emily was only 12 when she learned that love can be temporary, but longing is forever. Helen was a nurse at the small-town hospital, had gentle hands and a sweet voice, was the kind of woman who seemed born to care for others. When she died, she left a void the size of the world in Emily's heart, and a husband who began to converse even more with wood, as if in the veins of the furniture he created, he could find echoes of the woman he loved. It was Helen who taught Emily to read at 4, introducing books to her as if they were precious friends. "Stories are doors, my daughter," she would say while running her fingers through the girl's brown hair. "When you open one, you'll discover that the world is much bigger than our small town." And Emily took this teaching as a promise, devouring every book she could find in the municipal library, immersing herself in novels that spoke of impossible loves, of brave women, of mysterious men who appeared in the protagonists' lives like unexpected storms. At 20, Emily was an unlikely mixture of innocence and depth, a virgin by choice and lack of opportunity. As the town boys saw her as something too fragile to be touched, she nurtured romantic dreams that seemed straight out of the books she read. She believed in love as a transformative force, in the possibility of finding someone who would really see her, who would understand her silences, and who would know that behind the apparent sweetness was a woman capable of feeling with an intensity that could hurt. She worked part-time at the municipal library, an old building with high ceilings and windows that filtered the afternoon light like stained glass. Miss Hope, the head librarian, was a 60-year-old woman who treated books like children, and Emily as the natural heir to that kingdom of paper and dreams. It was there that Emily felt most herself, organizing shelves, recommending readings, living surrounded by the silent voices of 1,000 authors who kept her company. In her free afternoons, she walked barefoot along the dirt paths that led to the forest surrounding the town, feeling the texture of the ground beneath her feet, stopping to talk to ancient trees as if they were old acquaintances. She had this peculiarity that some found strange and others found charming. She spoke to nature as if it could answer, and in a way, for Emily, it did. In the wind that swayed the leaves, in the birds singing, in the smell of earth after rain, she found answers to questions she didn't even know she had asked. It was on one of these walks on a May afternoon, when autumn painted the leaves golden, that Nathan Vance appeared in her life, like a storm disguised as a breeze. She was sitting under the century-old fig tree at the forest entrance, reading a French novel she had borrowed from the library, when she heard the rumble of an engine approaching. A black car, a model she couldn't identify, but that seemed expensive, stopped on the dirt road. From the car stepped a man who seemed to have walked out of the pages of the book she read. Tall, dark-haired, with that kind of beauty that wasn't just physical, but had something magnetic, something that made the air around seem denser. He must have been about 30, wore casual but elegant clothes, and when he smiled at her, Emily felt her heart race in a way she had never experienced. "Sorry to bother you," he said, approaching with confident steps. "I'm a bit lost. Do you know the Montenegro farm? They say it's around here." Emily closed the book, feeling her cheeks flush. "It is, but it's been abandoned for years. Just follow this road about 2 more miles and turn left at the fork." Abandoned? Nathan seemed genuinely surprised. "What a shame. I heard it had a beautiful view from up there." "It does," confirmed Emily, getting up and brushing her skirt to remove the dry leaves. "My father used to take me there when I was little. You can see the whole town and the mountains in the background. But the place is kind of haunted now." Nathan laughed, and the sound of that laugh did something strange in Emily's chest. "Haunted? A smart girl like you believes in ghosts?" "How do you know I'm smart?" she asked, surprised by her own courage. "By the book you're reading," he said, pointing to the volume she was holding. Flaubert isn't exactly light reading for a Sunday afternoon. And that's how it began. With literature, with smiles, with Nathan showing genuine interest in her thoughts in a way no man had shown before. He said he was passing through town, worked in business consulting, traveled a lot, but there was something about Pine Valley that made him want to stay a few more days. "What would that be?" asked Emily, unable to hide her smile. "Maybe it's the possibility of getting to know better the girl who reads Flaubert under the trees," he replied, and for the first time in her life, Emily understood what books meant when they talked about butterflies in the stomach. The days that followed were like a waking dream. Nathan appeared every day, always in the late afternoon, always with a different excuse to be around. Sometimes he brought chocolates from the big city, sometimes books he thought she would like. Sometimes he simply appeared to talk while she finished work at the library. Miss Hope would look sideways but didn't say anything, and Emily felt like a romantic novel protagonist for the first time in her life. Nathan had the gift of words. He talked about places he had visited, books he had read, dreams and ambitions, with a passion that was contagious. Emily found herself anxiously waiting for their meetings, dressing more carefully, choosing clothes, thinking about what he would think. It was new to her, this feeling of wanting to please, of feeling special in someone's eyes. He told stories from his life that seemed straight out of movies. He said he had studied in New York, that he had a complicated past, that he had lost important people, and that's why he traveled so much, running from memories. Emily was moved by this masculine vulnerability, by the idea of being the person capable of healing the emotional wounds of this fascinating man. "You're different from other women I've known," he would say, holding her hands as they walked through the church square at dusk. "You have a purity that makes me believe there are still good things in the world." And Emily believed. She believed she had found true love, the one from books, the one that transforms and elevates. She believed that Nathan was the man who would show her the world beyond Pine Valley, who would love her, as she had always dreamed of being loved, with intensity and devotion. It was 3 weeks of dating that seemed like 3 years of concentrated happiness. Nathan was attentive, romantic, respectful. He never tried to force physical intimacies beyond careful kisses and contained caresses, and this made Emily like him even more. She felt that he respected her, that he understood she was special, that she deserved to be won over with patience. John Brandon watched his daughter's romance with the natural suspicion of a father, but couldn't find concrete reasons to disapprove of Nathan. The young man was educated, showed sincere interest in Emily, talked about books and classical music with genuine knowledge. When they conversed, Nathan made a point of including John in the conversations, using gestures and writing notes when necessary, showing respect for the older man's deafness. It was on the Friday of the 3rd week, on an August afternoon, when the Vermont winter showed its last teeth, that Nathan made the invitation that would change everything. Tonight is the new moon, he said, holding Emily's hands as they said goodbye at the library door. They say on moonless nights the stars shine brighter. How about we go to the Hastings farm to see? I heard that from there the view of the sky is impressive. Emily hesitated. The abandoned farm always gave her a strange feeling, even during the day. At night, with those stories that ran through the town about the Hastings family and the mysteries surrounding that property, the idea gave her chills. I don't know, Nathan. That place is kind of haunted. Haunted why? He laughed in that affectionate way that always reassured her. They're just small-town stories. Besides, I'll be with you. I won't let anything bad happen to my princess. My princess. The sweet words melted Emily's last resistance. After all, what could happen? She was with the man she loved, who protected her, who treated her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. All right, she agreed, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. But you promise we'll come back early? I promise, said Nathan, kissing her forehead tenderly. I'll pick you up at 9. Wear something warm. That night, Emily got ready with special care. She chose a navy blue dress that her mother had, bought for her before she died, a beige wool coat and flat shoes for walking. She brushed her long brown hair, leaving it loose as Nathan liked, and put on a light lavender perfume she had received for her birthday. John noticed his daughter's nervousness and made gestures asking if everything was okay. Emily replied that, yes, she was just going for a walk with Nathan to see the stars. Her father made a worried expression and wrote on a piece of paper, "Be careful. I trust him, but I trust you more. If something seems strange, come home." Emily kissed her father's bearded face, smelling the familiar scent of wood and varnish that always accompanied him. "Everything is fine, Dad. Nathan loves me. He would never do anything to hurt me." At 9 o'clock sharp, Nathan arrived driving the black car. He was different that night, more serious, but explained that it was just work fatigue. During the journey to the farm, they talked little. Emily attributed the silence to the concentration needed to drive in the dark on dirt roads, but a part of her, very small and easily ignored, noticed that something in Nathan's energy had changed. The Hastings farm was in a higher area, surrounded by dense forest. The main house, an imposing colonial building that had once been beautiful, now rose against the night sky like a melancholy shadow. The windows were all closed, some with boards nailed up, and vegetation had begun to reclaim the gardens that had once been organized. "It's a bit sinister at night," commented Emily, shivering as they got out of the car. "It's just an old house," said Nathan, but his voice sounded strange, too controlled. "Come, let's go to the forest. That's where you can see the sky better." He took a flashlight from the glove compartment and began walking toward the trail leading into the forest. Emily followed him, holding firmly to his hand, trying to ignore the growing feeling that something wasn't right. The tree branches seemed like ancient fingers trying to touch her, and the sound of their own steps on the soft earth echoed in a way that made her feel as if someone was following them. "Nathan, maybe we should go back. It's too dark here." "Relax. Emily, we're almost at a clearing. It's going to be beautiful, you'll see." And there really was a clearing, an open space where the new moon let the stars reign alone in the sky. It was beautiful, Emily had to admit. The sky looked like a black velvet cloak embroidered with diamonds, and for a moment she felt small and protected at the same time, standing there with the man she loved. "It really is beautiful," she whispered, resting her head on Nathan's shoulder. "You are beautiful," he said, and when she raised her face to look at him, she saw something different in his eyes. Something cold, calculating, that made her instinctively take a step back. "Nathan, is everything okay?" "It's perfect," he replied, and his voice sounded different, as if a mask had fallen. "You know that I love you, don't you, Emily?" "I know," she replied, but her voice trembled. "And when we truly love someone, we do anything to protect that love, to make sure it will be only ours, forever." It was then that Emily saw the rope in Nathan's hands. It was then that she understood that the man she thought she knew was a complete stranger. It was then that she screamed, but the sound was lost in the vastness of the forest, muffled by the trees that had been her friends, but now seemed like accomplices to something terrible. The struggle was brief and unequal. Nathan was stronger, heavier, and had the advantage of surprise. Emily tried to run but stumbled on the routes she knew so well during the day, and that at night had transformed into traps. When Nathan caught up with her, she was on the ground with a scraped knee and tears of terror running down her face. "Please, Nathan, don't do this. I love you, but not like this, please." "I know you love me," he said, with that frightening calm of someone executing a long thought-out plan. "That's why you'll understand. The world doesn't deserve you, Emily. The men in this town will want to dirty you, turn you into just another one. But I'm going to protect you from that. I'm going to keep you pure. Forever." He tied her by the wrists to a high, sturdy branch, in a position that kept her standing, but with her arms stretched above her head. Emily begged, cried, tried to make him remember all the good moments they had shared, all the conversations about books, all the dreams they had woven together. "You said you loved me," she sobbed. "And I do," replied Nathan, adjusting the ropes with care, as if he were an artist working on his masterpiece. "I love you so much that I prefer to see you like this, suspended between heaven and earth like an angel, than to see you becoming common. I'll come back for you, Emily, in a few days, when I'm sure you've understood the lesson, and then we can be together the right way." He took a step back, admiring his work. Emily hanging like an offering to the darkness, the brown hair falling around her face stained with tears, the navy blue dress her mother had bought trembling in the cold dawn. "Wind, this is how you look more beautiful," he said, almost whispering. "Untouchable. Mine." And then, simply, he left. The sound of the car moving away echoed through the forest like a death sentence, and Emily was left alone with the stars, with the cold biting her skin, with the terror and incomprehension of discovering that the love she thought she had found was actually a prison disguised as a fairy tale. The hours that followed were the longest of Emily's life. The dawn cold made her tremble uncontrollably. Her wrists burned where the ropes cut her skin, and the forced position made her muscles protest with pain that increased every minute. But worse than the physical pain was the emotional pain, the feeling of having been completely deceived, of having given her heart to a man who saw in her not a person, but an object to be possessed. She tried to scream for help several times, but the Hastings farm was far from any busy road, and her voice was lost in the immensity of the forest. Gradually, fatigue and cold drained her strength, and Emily began to slip between consciousness and fainting, between the hope that someone would come to save her and the terror that Nathan would return to continue whatever sick plan he had devised. It was when the first lights of dawn began to filter through the treetops that she heard footsteps approaching. For a moment, her heart raced with fear, thinking it was Nathan returning. But the footsteps were different, heavier, more deliberate, as if they belonged to someone who knew that forest better than their own hands. Adam Hastings had returned to die. Not in a literal sense, of course, but in that symbolic way that men choose when they can no longer bear the weight of existing. 7 years away from Pine Valley, 7 years running from ghosts that followed him like faithful shadows, and now he was back at the farm he had inherited from his grandfather, determined to face the demons he had left behind, or to join them, once and for all. The property was exactly as he had left it, taken over by weeds with the main house closed like a mausoleum, the windows nailed shut like dead eyes. Adam was 35, and seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime on his broad shoulders, in the erect posture he maintained out of pure pride, in the dark eyes that had learned to show nothing beyond a distant and dangerous courtesy. He was handsome in a way that frightened people, tall over 6 feet, black hair always perfectly combed, beard shaved with military precision, expensive but discreet clothes he wore like armor. He had the kind of elegance that comes from the cradle, but that was tempered by tragedy, that natural class of those born with privileges, but who learned through pain that money doesn't buy peace of mind. The Hastings family was old money in Vermont, mining, coffee farms, real estate investments that multiplied generation after generation. Adam had inherited not only the fortune, but also the responsibility of carrying a last name that weighed like lead on his back. With a degree in business administration from Harvard, a master's in economics from Yale, he had taken over the family business at 25 when his father died of a heart attack. It was at 28 that he met Marie. Marie Sullivan was everything Adam didn't know he was looking for. Spontaneous where he was controlled, luminous where he was dark, capable of laughing out loud in serious meetings and of making him forget for a few moments that he carried the world on his shoulders. The daughter of a respected Boston doctor, she was 24 when they met at a charity event, and from the first meeting, Adam knew she would be important. The marriage was the closest thing to happiness that Adam had ever experienced. Marie brought color to the gloomy farmhouse, filled the rooms with plants, music, and laughter. She had the gift of making the employees smile, of transforming formal dinners into lively conversations, of making Adam forget there was a world beyond those walls when they were together. For 3 years, they were happy in a way that seemed impossible for someone like Adam. Marie became pregnant in the 2nd year of marriage, and watching her belly grow was like witnessing an everyday miracle. Adam, who had always been too controlled, too reserved, discovered he was capable of spending hours talking to the baby through his wife's skin, making plans for a future that seemed golden. But happiness, Adam learned, is a temporary guest in the lives of the Hastings. Marie died on a September morning, found floating in the artificial lake at the back of the property, 7 months pregnant, with no signs of violence, no suicide note, no explanation that made sense. The investigations lasted months with Adam as the main suspect. After all, husbands are always the first to be investigated when wives die mysteriously. The media had a feast with the tragedy. Hastings heir under suspicion. Mysterious death. In Vermont high society. What happened to Marie Hastings? Photos of Adam entering and leaving the police station. Photos of the house. Photos of Marie smiling at social events. His private life exposed like a macabre spectacle for public consumption. He was acquitted for lack of evidence, but that mattered little. The shadow of suspicion stuck to him like a second skin. Friends drifted away. Social invitations stopped. Coming, women began to look at him with a mixture of fear and morbid fascination. Adam became an urban legend in life, the man who might have killed his pregnant wife and managed to escape justice. That's when he fled. He sold the Boston house, handed the business over to trusted administrators, and disappeared. He spent years traveling without destination, living in expensive hotels in cities he didn't know, trying to forget that he had once been capable of loving and being loved, trying to forget that maybe, somehow, he was really guilty of Marie's death. Now he was back, and the first thing he did was walk to the lake where she had died. It was dawn, the same time they had found her, and Adam stood there for hours waiting for the place to give him some answer, some peace, some form of forgiveness. It was when he was returning to the house, walking along the trail that cut through the forest, that he heard it. A low moan, almost inaudible, that could have been the wind if it wasn't so human. Adam stopped, straining his ear, and heard it again. Someone was in the forest, someone in distress. He followed the sound as if it were a soundtrack, his heavy footsteps breaking dry branches, until he reached the clearing where he found the scene that would change his life again. A woman tied to a tree, unconscious, dark brown hair falling, like curtains around her pale face, young, delicate, wearing simple clothes that indicated humble origins. For a terrible moment, Adam thought he was seeing Marie, and his heart raced in a way that left him dizzy. But when he approached, he saw that it was another person. Younger, with different features, but there was something in the fragility of that suspended figure that echoed painful memories. The ropes had cut her wrists, which bled slowly, and her skin was blue from cold. She was alive, but barely. Adam freed her carefully, cutting the ropes with the pocket knife he always carried. She collapsed in his arms like dead weight, and he had to carry her entire body's weight. She was too light, too fragile, and this awakened in him a protective instinct he thought had died with Marie. He didn't take the woman to the hospital. He didn't call the police. Something in him, perhaps the instinct of someone who had learned to distrust institutions, Perhaps the need to protect that fragility from curious eyes made him make a different decision. He took her home. The main house of the Hastings farm was a two-story colonial mansion that Adam had ordered renovated before leaving. Expensive furniture covered with sheets, family portraits on the walls, an atmosphere of melancholy grandeur that perfectly matched the owner's state of mind. Adam took the woman to the guest room in the east wing, the farthest from his own quarters, and called Dr. Mitchell. Thomas Mitchell was the Hastings family doctor for 30 years, a discreet and competent man who had cared for Adam's grandfather, then his father, and who had been responsible for monitoring Marie's pregnancy. He was one of the few people in Pine Valley who still treated Adam normally, perhaps because he had seen too much in life to be impressed by rumors. Severe dehydration, mild hypothermia, wrist injuries indicating forced restraint, the doctor diagnosed after examining the patient. She was tied up by someone and left in the elements for how long? "I don't know," replied Adam, observing the serene face of the sleeping woman. "I found her like that in the forest." Dr. Mitchell stared at him with that penetrating look that comes from experience. "Adam, you know you should call the police. This looks like a crime." "And you know how the police in this town treat crimes against young women," retorted Adam bitterly. "They'll want to know what she was doing alone in the forest, what clothes she was wearing if she wasn't provoking the aggressor. I'd rather take care of her here until she recovers and can decide what to do." The doctor sighed but didn't argue. He knew Adam since childhood, knew that beneath the layer of coldness was a man capable of protecting those who needed protection. He left medications, care instructions, and promised to return the next day. Emily slept for 2 whole days. Adam hired Mrs. Jenkins, a 60-year-old lady who had worked at the farm before he left, to care for the patient. Jenkins was discreet, efficient, and had the kind of loyalty to the Hastings family that came from decades of good treatment. She didn't ask questions, just cared for the girl as if she were her own daughter. When Emily finally woke up, it was late at night and the house was silent. She opened her eyes slowly, feeling her body aching and her mind confused, not understanding where she was. The room was beautiful, elegant, with antique furniture and soft sheets that smelled of lavender. A soft light came from the bedside lamp, creating shadows that danced on the walls. She tried to get up and moaned from the pain in her bandaged wrists. The memories came back like an avalanche. Nathan, the forest, the ropes, the terror. For a moment she thought it had all been a nightmare, but the real pain in her body said otherwise. "You're safe." The voice came from the armchair in the corner of the room, and Emily turned quickly, startled. A man was sitting in the shadows, tall and elegant, even in the relaxed position, watching her with an expression that mixed concern and something harder to define. Who are you?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Adam Hastings. This is my house. I found you in the forest and brought you here." The surname hit Emily like lightning. Hastings. The stories that ran through town, the whispers about his wife's death, the abandoned farm. She was in the house of a man who might be a murderer. Adam noticed the fear in her eyes and got up slowly, keeping his distance. "I know what you must be thinking. I know the stories they tell about me in town, but I guarantee you won't suffer any harm here. You're free to leave when you feel better." There was something in his voice, a tired dignity. That made Emily hesitate. She expected to find a monster, but the man before her seemed more lost than dangerous, and there was in his eyes a deep sadness that echoed her own pain. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Adam was silent for a long time, as if the question caught him by surprise. "Because someone needed to," he finally answered. The days that followed created a strange and delicate routine. Emily recovered slowly, cared for by Mrs. Jenkins during the day, and maintaining cautious conversations with Adam during the nights. He always appeared at nightfall, brought books he thought she would like, asked about her well-being with a formal courtesy that hid something more intense. Emily discovered that Adam was a man of many layers, intelligent, cultured, with a private library that made her eyes sparkle with envy. He knew authors she loved, talked about literature with a contained passion, had interesting opinions about art and music. But there was in him a constant melancholy, as if carrying his own name was too heavy a burden. "Why did you come back?" she asked in one of these nightly conversations, as she leafed through a rare edition of Hawthorne that he had lent her. "I'm not sure," replied Adam, looking out the window at the forest where he had found her. "Maybe because running away doesn't solve anything. Problems travel with us. And what are your problems?" He looked at her with those dark eyes that seemed to hold storms. "The same as yours, I imagine, discovering that the people we love can destroy us." The phrase hung in the air between them, loaded with meanings. Emily felt there was something more to Adam's story, something he wasn't telling, but there was also something between them, an electric current that made her nervous when he was around. It was in the second week of her recovery that Emily decided to explore the house. Adam had gone out to take care of business in town. Mrs. Jenkins was cooking, and she felt strong enough to walk the mansion's corridors. The house was beautiful, full of antiques and works of art, but there was a museum atmosphere, as if life had stopped at some point in the past. It was on the second floor, in a wing that seemed uninhabited, that she found the room. It was clearly woman's room, decorated in soft shades of blue and white, with delicate furniture and photographs scattered on the surfaces. Emily entered slowly, feeling she was invading a sacred space. The photos showed a beautiful woman, blonde, with a luminous smile always beside Adam. In some, she was pregnant, radiant, with protective hands over her belly. Marie Hastings. The room had been preserved exactly as it was, like a sanctuary. Clothes still in the closet, perfumes on the dressing table, books marked on the page where she had stopped reading. It was as if Adam expected her to return at any moment. It was when she opened the closet that Emily found the dress. It was a deep blue, elegant but simple, carefully hung among others. There was nothing special about it at first glance, but when Emily touched it, she felt something strange in the pocket. A folded paper, yellowed by time. With trembling hands, she opened the letter. The handwriting was feminine, delicate, but the words were like daggers. "Nathan, I can no longer pretend that what we are doing is right. I love my husband. I love the baby I'm carrying, and I cannot destroy our family for a passion that I know has no future. Adam doesn't deserve this. He is a good man, and I was foolish enough to let myself be seduced by the lies of a man like you. I don't want to see you anymore. Don't look for me. I'm going to tell everything to Adam because I can't carry this lie anymore. He deserves to know the truth, even if it means losing everything. If you really love me, you will leave me in peace. If you force me to continue with this, I would rather die than live in a lie." Marie, September 15th. Emily felt the blood freeze in her veins. Nathan. The same Nathan who had tied her in the forest, who had destroyed her life with his romantic lies. Nathan had had an affair with Marie Hastings, and the letter was dated 2 days before her death. Her legs weakened, and she leaned on the dresser, trying to process the information. Nathan knew Adam. Nathan had destroyed Adam's marriage. And Marie had died shortly after writing this letter, determined to tell the truth to her husband. "You shouldn't be here." Adam's voice behind her made her jump in fright. He was at the door of the room, and the expression on his face was indescribable. Not exactly anger, but a deep pain mixed with something that could be relief. I'm sorry," stammered Emily, instinctively hiding the letter. "I didn't mean to mess with her things." Adam entered the room slowly, as if it were the first time he had stepped there in years. "I haven't touched this room since she died. Mrs. Jenkins cleans, but I couldn't." "Enter here," Emily observed him, noticing the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands closed into fists. "She was beautiful," she said softly. "She was," agreed Adam, picking up one of the photos. "She was the most luminous thing that ever entered this house, made everything seem possible." What happened to her? Adam was silent for so long that Emily thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was laden with an old pain. "She drowned in the lake. They found the body one September morning, 7 months pregnant with my son. He paused, and when he continued, there was a terrible bitterness in his words. The police thought I killed her. The whole town thought I killed her. Sometimes I think I killed her. Why? Because the night before we had a terrible fight. She had been strange for weeks, distant, as if hiding something. I pressed her to tell me what was happening, and she said she needed to tell me something important, but that she couldn't that night. Said she would tell me the next day. Adam let out a bitter laugh. The next day she was dead. Emily felt the weight of the letter in her hands as if it were made of lead. Marie had decided to tell the truth to Adam, but died before she could, and he had spent 7 years blaming himself for something he didn't even know had happened. Adam, she began, and something in her voice made him look at her attentively. I found something. She extended the letter, watching his face as he read. She saw the exact moment when he understood, when all the puzzle pieces fit in his mind. The letter trembled in his hands, and for a moment Emily thought he was going to collapse. Nathan, he whispered, and there was so much hatred in that single word that Emily felt afraid. It's the same man, she said softly. The one who did this to me. The one who was with your wife. Adam raised his eyes to her, and Emily saw something terrible there. It wasn't just hatred, but a thirst for revenge that had been dormant for 7 years and now awakened with full force. He killed her, said Adam, and it wasn't a question. We don't know that. I know. His voice was cold as ice. Marie wouldn't kill herself. Not pregnant. Not without giving me a chance to forgive her. She was going to tell me about the affair. She was going to try to save our marriage, but he didn't let her. Emily felt a chill run up her spine. What are you going to do? Adam carefully folded the letter, putting it in his jacket pocket. When he looked at Emily again, there was a dark determination in his eyes. I'm going to find him, he said simply. Adam, no. Don't do anything that could harm you. Harm me? He laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Emily, this man destroyed my life, killed my wife and my son, made me spend 7 years believing I was a murderer, and now I find out he did. The same thing to you. He moved closer to her, and Emily could see the intensity in his eyes. He needs to pay. And me? She asked, surprising them both with the question. What happens to me? Adam stopped, as if the question brought him back to reality. He really looked at her for the first time since they had started that conversation, and Emily saw something change in his expression. You stay here, he said, and there was a possessiveness in his voice that made her shiver. Stay with me, where I can protect you. I'm not your prisoner, Adam. No, he agreed, moving closer, but you are my responsibility. I saved you, Emily. That creates a bond between us. They were very close now, close enough for her to smell his expensive cologne, to see the small scars on his hands, to notice that he was trembling almost imperceptibly. What kind of bond? She asked, her voice coming out hoarser than intended. The kind that frightens and saves at the same time, replied Adam, raising his hand to touch her face. The kind that shouldn't exist but does. And then, without further words, he kissed her. It wasn't a gentle or hesitant kiss. It was a kiss loaded with all the pain and anger and need that had been dammed up in him for years. Emily felt as if she were being set on fire and drowned at the same time, as if all the romantic books she had read hadn't prepared her for the reality of being desired by a man like Adam Hastings. When they separated, they were both breathing heavily, and Emily realized she had crossed a line she didn't know existed. She was no longer the innocent girl who had been tied in the forest. She was a woman standing in the dead wife's room of a man marked by tragedy, feeling something that was both wrong and inevitable. We shouldn't, she whispered. No, agreed Adam, but he didn't move away. But you feel it too, don't you? This thing between us. Emily couldn't deny it. There was something indeed, something that had begun that first night when she woke up and found him watching over her sleep. A connection that went beyond gratitude or compassion, something deeper and more dangerous. Adam, Don't say anything now, he interrupted, finally moving away. I need to think. I need to decide what to do with this information about Nathan, and you need to decide if you want to stay here with me, or if you want to return to your previous life. My previous life doesn't exist anymore, said Emily with sudden sadness. Nathan destroyed that too. Then build a new one, here, with me. The proposal hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities and dangers. Emily knew that staying meant getting involved with a man whose life was marked by tragedy, whose reputation was ruined, who carried dark secrets. But she also knew that leaving meant returning to Pine Valley, where Nathan was still free, where her family would ask questions she didn't know how to answer. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Adam nodded and left the room, leaving her alone with the ghosts of Marie Hastings and the letter that had changed everything. Emily stayed there for a long time, holding the photograph of the dead woman, trying to understand what it meant to be falling in love with her husband. Because that's what was happening, she knew now. She was falling in love with Adam Hastings, with the man who had saved her, who read the same books as her, who carried enough pain to recognize her pain. It was crazy, it was dangerous, it was everything she shouldn't be feeling, but it was real. And for the first time since she had woken up tied to that tree, Emily felt that perhaps it was possible to feel alive again. The days that followed that discovery in Marie's room were like walking an emotional tightrope. Emily felt as if she were living in two parallel realities. During the day, she was the polite and grateful guest in the Hastings house, talking with Mrs. Jenkins about old recipes, reading in the library, recovering physically and emotionally from the trauma. At night, when Adam returned from his mysterious trips to town, she transformed into another person, a woman who discovered desires she didn't know she possessed. Adam had also changed. The discovery of Marie's letter seemed to have released something in him, an intensity he had previously kept carefully controlled. He watched her with an attention that made her feel as if she were being studied, deciphered, possessed by his gaze alone. The formal courtesy of the first days was gone. In its place grew an electric tension that made the air seem denser when they were in the same room. "Have you investigated anything about Nathan?" Emily asked on one of those nights while they were in the library. She pretended to read but was actually observing Adam over the pages, noticing how he held his whiskey glass, how his long fingers curved around the crystal. "Something," he replied without raising his eyes from the accounting book he was studying. "Nathan Vance, 32 years old, works as an independent consultant, or at least that's what he tells people who ask. In fact, he seems to live by conning women in small towns." Emily felt her stomach turn. Other women? Adam finally looked at her, and there was something dark in his eyes. "At least 3 that I managed to track down. Always the same pattern. He appears in a small town, wins over a young and vulnerable woman, disappears after causing some kind of damage. You and Marie weren't the only ones. But Marie was married, and pregnant, which made the game more interesting for him, I imagine." Adam's voice was laden with a cold hatred that made Emily shiver. Men like Nathan don't just want to possess women. They want to destroy them. They want to prove to themselves that they can break anything beautiful they find. Emily closed the book forcefully. "And what do you intend to do with that information?" "I'm still deciding." "Adam, look at me." He obeyed, and when their eyes met, Emily saw a storm of emotions that both frightened and attracted her. "Promise me you won't do anything impulsive. Promise me you won't destroy yourself because of the past." "Why does that matter to you?" This question caught her off guard. Emily hesitated, feeling that any answer would be a confession of feelings she wasn't yet ready to admit even to herself. "Because you saved me," she said finally. But they both knew there was more behind those words. Adam got up slowly, setting aside the book, and walked to where she was sitting. When he bent down to be at her level, Emily could smell his cologne mixed with the aroma of whiskey, a combination she was beginning to associate with safety and desire. "Emily," he said, his voice low and husky, "you know that what's happening between us isn't just gratitude, don't you?" "I know," she whispered, "because denying it would be lying, and there were already too many lies in their lives. And you know it's dangerous, that I'm not an easy man to love?" No one worth it is. Easy to love. Adam smiled, and it was the first time Emily had seen a genuine smile on his face. It wasn't a happy smile, but there was a melancholy beauty in it that made her understand why Marie had fallen in love with this man. Marie used to say that, he said, and for a moment Emily feared he would pull away, lost in memories of the past. But instead he raised his hand to touch her face. "But you're not Marie, are you?" "No," confirmed Emily, covering his hand with hers. "I'm me, and I'm here, and I'm alive." It was as if these words broke some barrier Adam had built around himself. He kissed her again, but this time it was different, more desperate, more needy, as if she were oxygen and he were drowning. Emily responded with the same intensity, allowing years of solitude and fear to transform into something more powerful. When they separated, they were both breathing heavily, and Emily could see the conflict in Adam's eyes. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "Then don't hurt me." "Emily, you don't understand. I don't know how to be gentle anymore. I don't know how to love without destroying." She stood up, standing very close to him, close enough to feel the heat of his body. "Then learn with me. Learn again." It was Emily who kissed him this time. Emily who led him by the hand out of the library, through the silent corridors of the house to his room. It was she who decided she was ready to stop being the girl who had been tied in the forest and become the woman who chose her own destiny. Adam's room was masculine and elegant, dominated by a huge dark wood bed. There were paintings on the walls, books piled on the bedside table, expensive clothes organized with military precision. It was the room of a man who lived alone, but who hadn't completely given up on keeping appearances. "Are you sure?" asked Adam, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that contrasted with the natural authority he emanated. "I am," replied Emily. And it was true. For the first time in her life, she was absolutely certain of something. What happened between them that night was both delicate and devastating. Adam touched her as if she were made of crystal, but there was a contained passion in each caress that made her understand he was holding back, trying not to let the intensity of his feelings overwhelm her. Emily, in turn, discovered that her body was capable of feeling things that romantic books only suggested, that pleasure could be so intense it almost hurt. When Adam moved over her, when he made her his for the first time, Emily understood she was crossing a door that couldn't be closed again. It wasn't just the loss of physical virginity, but the discovery that she was capable of giving herself completely to someone, of trusting to that point, of loving with an intensity that frightened her. Afterwards, as they rested entwined, Adam ran his fingers through her hair with a tenderness that contrasted with the passion of moments before. "Are you all right?" he asked, and Emily could hear the genuine concern in his voice. "Better than all right," she replied, nestling more against his chest. "I'm whole. Whole." "Nathan broke me, Adam. He made me feel I was just an object, something that could be possessed and discarded. But you made me feel human again. You made me feel I can choose who to give myself to." Adam was silent for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was laden with emotion. Marie said something similar once. Said I made her feel she could be herself. He paused, and Emily felt his muscles tense. "But I couldn't protect her. I won't fail you, too. Adam, you didn't fail Marie. Nathan manipulated her, blackmailed her, probably threatened her. You couldn't have known." "I could. If I had been more attentive, if I hadn't been so focused on business, if I—" Emily rose, propping herself on her elbow to look him in the eyes. "If you keep blaming yourself for the past, you'll lose the present, and I am here now, choosing to be with you. Don't let ghosts destroy this too." Adam stared at her for a long moment, and Emily could see the internal struggle happening in his eyes. Finally, he pulled her down, kissing her with a desperate tenderness. "I'm afraid of you," he confessed against her lips. "Why?" "Because I'm starting to believe I can be happy again, and that terrifies me." The days that followed were the happiest Emily had ever experienced. She and Adam developed an intimacy that went far beyond the physical, although that was also extraordinary. He showed her the property, took her for walks in the gardens that were beginning to be recovered, taught her about the family business, made her feel part of something bigger. Emily discovered that Adam was a man of multiple facets. He could be tender and protective in the morning, passionate and intense in the afternoon, vulnerable and needy at night. He had deep emotional scars, but also a capacity to love that was only dormant, not dead. She began to help in the house library, organizing the rare books that Adam collected, creating catalogues, suggesting acquisitions. It was work that made her feel useful and valued, very different from what she had experienced in Pine Valley, where she had always felt like someone waiting for life to begin. It was during one of those afternoons organizing books that Mrs. Jenkins sought her with a worried expression. "Miss, there's a man in town asking about you." Emily felt her blood freeze. What kind of man? Handsome, well-dressed, driving a black car, said he was your fiancé, that you had disappeared and he was worried. Mrs. Jenkins paused, studying Emily's pale face. "But I know that look of fear, miss. It's the man who hurt you, isn't it?" Emily nodded, her hands trembling as she dropped the book she was holding. "Nathan, he found me." "What do you want to do?" Before Emily could answer, they heard the sound of tires skidding on the gravel at the entrance. Through the window, she saw the black car she knew too well parking in front of the house. Her heart raced, and for a moment she felt again like the terrified girl tied to the tree. But then she remembered Adam's words the previous night, the way he had made her feel strong and protected. She was no longer that girl. She was a woman who had chosen to fight for her happiness. "Where's Adam?" she asked. "He went to Boston to take care of some business. He won't be back until tomorrow." Emily closed her eyes, gathering courage. When she opened them again, there was a determination that surprised even Mrs. Jenkins. "Call the police," she said, "and let me speak to him." Nathan knocked on the main door with a confidence that made anger grow in Emily's chest. When she opened it, she found the same charming smile that had won her over weeks ago, but now she could see the coldness behind it. "Emily, my love," he said, as if they had separated on friendly terms. "I was so worried. You simply disappeared." "You left me tied to a tree," she said, keeping her voice firm. "To die." Nathan had the audacity to look hurt. "Love, you didn't understand. I was trying to protect you, teach you about the real world. I knew you would come back to me when you understood." "I did understand. I understood that you're a monster." "Emily, don't be dramatic. Look where you are now, living in the house of the town murderer. You think he loves you? You think you can trust a man who killed his own pregnant wife?" The attempt at manipulation was so obvious that Emily almost laughed. "I know the truth about Marie Hastings. I know you were the one who killed her." For the first time, Nathan's mask slipped. His eyes narrowed, and the smile transformed into something dangerous. "Prove it," he said, his voice now cold as ice. "I have the letter Marie wrote to you 2 days before she died." Nathan took a step forward, and Emily saw the violence in his eyes. Instinctively, she stepped back but kept her posture erect. "Where is that letter?" "In a safe place, and if anything happens to me, other people will see it." "Emily, you're playing with fire. Marie learned that the hard way." "Are you confessing?" Nathan laughed, a humorless sound. "Marie was a romantic fool just like you. Thought she could use me and then discard me when her conscience weighed heavy. Thought she could threaten me with telling everything to her husband." He moved closer, and Emily could see the madness in his eyes. "I rehearsed for her the same lesson I taught you. Some lessons are only learned through pain. You forced her into the lake. I helped her understand that some choices have permanent consequences." Nathan was now very close, too close. "And now, I'm going to teach you the same lesson. You're going to come back with me, Emily. You're going to be mine as you should have been from the beginning. Never. Then you'll die here just like Marie died, and I'll make it look like your beloved Adam killed you too. Imagine the scandal, 2 murders in the same house by the same man. This time, he won't escape prison." That's when Emily heard the sound she had been waiting for, police sirens approaching. Nathan heard them too, and his face contorted with rage. "You clever bitch," he growled. But before he could do anything, they heard the roar of a powerful engine arriving at high speed. Adam's black Audi skidded at the entrance, and he got out of the car like a human storm. Emily had never seen Adam truly furious. During all the conversations about Nathan, all the pain of the past, he had maintained a cold and controlled dignity. But now, seeing the man who had destroyed his life threatening the woman he loved, all that restraint disappeared. "Get off my property," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Nathan turned, and for the first time, Emily saw fear in his eyes. Adam was bigger, stronger, and there was a natural authority in him that Nathan, despite all his manipulation, couldn't fake. "Adam Hastings," said Nathan, trying to regain composure, "the famous wife killer. I came to get my fiancée." "Your fiancée?" Adam laughed, a terrible sound. "You mean the woman you tied to a tree to die, the woman you traumatized and abandoned?" "That was a misunderstanding, like killing Marie was a misunderstanding." Nathan went rigid. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I know everything," said Adam, taking the letter from his pocket. "I have the letter Marie wrote to you. I have proof that you had an affair. And now I have your confession that you killed her." That's when Emily realized that Adam had arrived in time to hear part of the conversation. He had been there, listening to Nathan confess his crime. "You can't prove anything," said Nathan, but his voice trembled. "I can and I will." Adam approached, and Nathan instinctively backed away. "You destroyed my life, killed my wife and my child, made me spend 7 years in hell, and now you dare come to my house to threaten the woman I love?" The declaration hit Emily like lightning. Adam had said he loved her right there in front of Nathan, without hesitation or shame. The sirens were now very close, and 2 police cars entered the property. Nathan looked around like a cornered animal, calculating his options. "This isn't over," he said to Emily. "You're still mine. You always will be." "She was never yours," said Adam, positioning himself between Nathan and Emily. "And she never will be. But you will belong to justice, finally." The officers got out of the cars, and Emily recognized Sheriff Daniels, a serious man who had investigated Marie's case years ago. He looked at the scene with professional interest. "Sheriff," said Adam, keeping his voice controlled, "this man confessed to the murder of Marie Hastings. We have witnesses and evidence." Nathan tried to run, but it was a pathetic attempt. The officers caught up with him easily, and when they handcuffed him, Emily felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "This doesn't end here, Emily," shouted Nathan, as he was taken away. "You belong to me, you'll always belong to me." Adam took a step toward him, fists clenched, but Emily held him by the arm. "No," she said softly. "He's not worth it. Let justice take care of him." Adam looked at her, and Emily saw all the anger transform into relief. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he feared she might disappear. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's over. Finally over." But even as she said it, Emily knew it wasn't quite true. Nathan had been arrested, yes, but the marks he had left on their lives wouldn't disappear so easily. And something in the way he had looked at her before being taken away, something in the promise in his eyes, made her feel that perhaps he would find a way to come back. Adam also seemed to feel this, because when they separated there was a new concern in his eyes. "Let's get out of here," he said, "at least for a while until we're sure he can't hurt us anymore." "Where to?" "Anywhere we can start over, away from all this pain." Emily nodded, but as they walked back to the house, she couldn't help looking over her shoulder. The feeling that Nathan still posed a threat didn't leave her, and she had the terrible suspicion that their story wasn't over yet. That night, as they made love with a desperate urgency, as if it were the last time, neither mentioned the fear. They shared, but both knew that Nathan's arrest was just the end of the first act of a tragedy that was still being written. And when they fell asleep entwined, it was with the knowledge that sometimes love isn't enough to protect the people we love. Sometimes to keep love alive, one must be willing to fight for it until the end. The dawn would bring news that would confirm their worst fears. The dawn brought a call that would change everything again. Emily woke to the insistent ring of the house phone, echoing through the mansion's corridors. It was too early for normal calls, and something in the urgent tone of the rings made her sit up in bed with her heart racing. Beside her, Adam stirred, still drowsy, but quickly became alert when he noticed the time. "Hastings," he answered, his voice still husky from sleep. Emily watched his face gradually change as he listened to whoever was on the other end of the line. She saw his jaw tighten, his dark eyes narrow, his posture stiffen as if preparing for battle. "I understand," he said finally. "Thank you for letting me know." When he hung up, he remained silent for a long moment, looking at the phone as if the device could provide answers he didn't want to hear. "What happened?" asked Emily, though something inside her already knew she wouldn't like the answer. "Nathan escaped." The words hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. "What do you mean, escaped?" Adam got up, beginning to dress with quick and precise movements. "During transport to Boston, the police car had an accident in the mountains, and when the paramedics arrived, Nathan had disappeared. One of the officers is in the hospital, the other—" He paused as if the words were difficult to pronounce. "The other is dead." Emily felt her legs weaken. He killed a police officer to escape. And now he's free. Injured, probably, but free. Adam finished dressing and turned to her. "Emily, you need to get out of here. You need to go far away where he can't find you. And you." "I'll stay. Someone needs to end this." "No." Emily got up from the bed, wrapping herself in the sheet. "I won't run away again. I won't let you face this alone." "Emily, be reasonable. This man has already killed my wife, a police officer, almost killed you. He won't hesitate to kill us both, I know." Emily approached him, placing her hands on Adam's chest. "But running away doesn't solve anything. He'll hunt us forever. The only way to end this is by facing it." Adam held her face between his hands, and Emily could see fear and love fighting in his eyes. "I can't lose you too. I couldn't bear it." "Then let's make sure that doesn't happen. Together." They spent the whole day preparing. Adam called contacts in New York, people who owed favors to the Hastings family, asking for reinforcements. He installed a temporary security system in the house, checked all entrances and exits, made a contingency plan in case Nathan tried to invade the property. Emily, for her part, felt a strange calm taking over her. It was as if, after weeks of being protected and cared for, she was finally taking back control of her own life. She was no longer the terrified girl tied to the tree. She was a woman who had found her strength and was willing to fight for her happiness. In the afternoon, while Adam was talking with the security guards who had arrived from Boston, Emily decided to go up to the attic of the house. There was something she wanted to check, an intuition she couldn't ignore. The Hastings attic was immense, full of antique furniture covered with white sheets, travel trunks from past eras, framed paintings leaning against the walls. There was an atmosphere of accumulated memories, of untold stories that echoed in the dusty silence. It was at the back of the attic, behind an old wardrobe, that Emily found what she was looking for, without knowing she was looking for it. There was a small table leaning against the wall, and on it some personal objects that had clearly belonged to Marie. Simple jewelry, photographs, some letters yellowed by time. But what caught Emily's attention was a leather-bound diary, open to a specific page as if someone had left it there on purpose. With trembling hands, she picked up the diary and read. September 15th, last entry. "I don't know if anyone will ever read this, but I need to leave a record. Nathan threatened me today. He said if I told Adam about our affair, he would kill me and the baby. But I can't live in the lie anymore. Adam deserves to know the truth, even if it means losing everything. I've made a decision. I'm going to tell him everything tomorrow, no matter what. And if Nathan tries to fulfill his threats, I leave this diary as evidence. I buried a copy of all the letters he wrote me under the fig tree in the clearing where we used to meet. If something happens to me, maybe someone will find them and understand what really happened. Adam, if you're reading this, know that I always loved you. The affair with Nathan was a terrible mistake, a moment of weakness when I felt alone and neglected by your business. But I never doubted my love for you. This baby is yours, always was yours, and if I die, it's because I'm trying to protect our family. To whoever comes after me and finds Adam's love, know this. He is a good man, but wounded. You'll have to go through fire to deserve his light. But if you succeed, you'll find a love worth any sacrifice. Marie Hastings. Emily closed the diary with tears in her eyes. Marie had predicted her own death, had left clues, had even left a message for the woman who might love Adam after her. It was as if, even dead, she was trying to protect the husband she had loved. The fig tree. Emily remembered the century-old tree at the forest entrance where she had met Nathan. Marie had buried evidence there, evidence that could definitively incriminate Nathan, that could give Adam the justice he deserved. When she came down from the attic, she found the house in an uproar. Adam was urgently talking with one of the security guards, and when he saw her, his expression became even tenser. "Emily, where were you? We're tracking suspicious movements around the property. Nathan is nearby." She showed him the diary, watching. Adam's face changed as he read. When he finished, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "She knew," he whispered. "Marie knew she was going to die and tried to leave us a way to prove the truth." "The evidence is buried under the fig tree," said Emily. "We need to recover it." "No." Adam shook his head firmly. "It's too dangerous. Nathan is probably waiting for us to do exactly that." "Then it's a perfect trap," said Emily, surprising everyone with her calm. "He expects us to go after the evidence, and we expect him to appear. The difference is that this time we're prepared. Emily, I won't let you expose yourself like this. And I won't let you carry this guilt forever." She held his hands. "Adam, Marie died trying to protect both of you. The least we can do is honor her sacrifice. We need to end this." The plan they made was simple and dangerous. Emily would go to the fig tree accompanied by 2 security guards, ostensibly to recover the evidence. Adam would hide in the forest with the other men, waiting for Nathan to appear. It was human bait, and everyone knew the risk was enormous. When late afternoon arrived, the time Nathan always preferred for his sadistic games, Emily walked along the familiar trail leading to the forest. She had a gun borrowed from Adam hidden at her waist, but hoped she wouldn't need to use it. The security guards accompanied her at a safe distance, pretending to be just routine security. The fig tree was exactly as she remembered, imposing and serene, its thick roots creating small natural caves in the ground. Emily began to look for signs of disturbed earth, some indication of where Marie might have buried the evidence. It was when she was kneeling examining the roots that she heard the voice that made her freeze. "How touching! The little virgin has returned to the place where it all began." Nathan emerged from the trees like a shadow, and Emily could see he was injured. There was dried blood on his forehead, his clothes were torn, and he limped slightly. But his eyes maintained the same dangerous coldness, and there was a pistol in his hand. "Nathan," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "it's over. Everyone knows what you did. Turn yourself in." "Turn myself in?" He laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Dear Emily, you still don't understand. I have nothing more to lose. I killed a police officer to get here. My life is over. But I'm going to take you with me." "Where are the security guards?" she asked, looking around. "Oh, let me guess. Hidden in the forest waiting for me to appear? How predictable." Emily realized he had discovered the plan, that he had probably neutralized the security guards. Somehow, she was alone with a man who had nothing more to lose. "You know," continued Nathan, approaching slowly, "Marie had the same look of fear you're making now when she understood I was serious. She thought she could blackmail me, use me, and then discard me. She learned she was wrong." "How did you kill her?" "It was almost poetic, actually. I brought her to the lake, said I wanted to talk about our relationship one last time. When she realized my intentions, it was too late." Nathan smiled, a terrible expression. "She begged for the baby's life, said she would do anything, that she would never bother me again, but some lessons are only learned one way." Emily felt a cold anger grow in her chest. "You're a monster. I'm a man who understands that women need discipline. Marie understood that in the end, and you will understand too." It was then that Emily heard something that made her smile for the first time in days. The almost inaudible sound of branches, breaking behind Nathan, the kind of sound that only someone who knew that forest like the palm of their hand could make without being detected. Adam had arrived. "You know, Nathan," she said, keeping his attention focused on her, "there's one thing you never understood about women." "Oh? And what would that be?" "That we aren't objects to be possessed. We're people who choose who to love." Emily stood up slowly. "And I chose Adam Hastings. I chose a man who respects me, who protects me without diminishing me, who understands that loving someone means freeing them, not imprisoning them." "Tivolis, you chose a murderer," growled Nathan. "I chose a man who was unjustly accused of the crime you committed, a man who spent 7 years in hell because of you." Emily took a step toward him, surprising him with her courage. "And now he's going to have his revenge." That's when Adam emerged from the trees like a silent storm. Nathan turned quickly, but Adam was already too close. The fight was brief and brutal. Nathan tried to use the gun, but Adam was faster, stronger, and motivated by 7 years of accumulated pain and anger. The shot that echoed through the forest made Emily scream, but when the echo dissipated, it was Nathan who was on the ground, moaning and holding his wounded shoulder. Adam was standing over him, the gun now in his hands, his face a mask of controlled coldness. "I should kill you now," said Adam, his voice low and dangerous. "I should make you pay for every day of hell you caused me." "Do it," challenged Nathan, "through the pain. Be the murderer everyone thinks you are." Adam raised the gun, and for a moment, Emily feared he really was going to shoot. But then she approached, placing her hand gently on his arm. "Adam, no. He's not worth destroying your soul over. He killed Marie, he killed my son, he almost killed you. I know, and he'll pay for it, but not like this. Not by turning us into what he is." Adam looked at her, and Emily could see the battle happening in his eyes. Finally, he lowered the gun. "You're right," he said, "but not for him. For us." The security guards appeared a few minutes later, explaining they had been ambushed but had managed to free themselves. Nathan was tied up and taken back to the police, this time with much greater security. This time, there would be no escape. But before he was taken away, Emily knelt beside him. "Nathan," she said, "I want you to understand something. You thought you possessed me, that I would eternally be your victim. But you were wrong. You made me stronger. You taught me to recognize true love when I found it. And for that, in a perverse way, I almost thank you." Nathan stared at her with hatred, but also with something that could be despair. "You'll still come back to me, they all come back." "Never," said Emily with absolute certainty, "because I learned the difference between possession and love, and I prefer to be loved." When Nathan was finally taken away, Emily and Adam were left alone in the clearing where everything had begun. The sun was setting, painting the sky golden, and for the first time in months, Emily felt true peace. "Do you still want to look for the evidence Marie buried?" asked Adam. "Yes," she replied, "not to prove your innocence because we already know the truth, but to honor her memory." They searched for almost an hour before finding the small metal box buried between the roots of the fig tree. Inside were letters, photographs, even recordings on a small recorder that Marie had used to document Nathan's threats. But the most important thing was an envelope addressed to Adam and to whoever he loves after me. Adam opened it with trembling hands and read aloud, "My dear Adam, if you're reading this, it means my worst suspicions have been confirmed and Nathan has fulfilled his threats. I want you to know that I died loving you, sorry for my mistakes, but grateful for the happy years we had. Don't blame yourself for what happened. You were a wonderful husband, and I was the one foolish enough to let myself be seduced by the lies of a man like Nathan. My only hope is that you can forgive yourself and find happiness again. To the woman who wins your heart after me, take care of him. He will resist love because he will be afraid of losing again. Be patient, be strong. Show him that not all love is destructive, that some loves strengthen instead of weakening. Adam deserves to be happy, deserves to be loved without reservations, And if you're reading this beside him, it's because you're brave enough to fight for that love. Go through fire if necessary. His light is worth any sacrifice. With love and hope, Marie. When Adam finished reading, there were tears in his eyes. Emily was also crying, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. She gave us her blessing, whispered Emily. She did, agreed Adam, pulling her into his arms. Marie was always wise like that, always knew how to see what was really important. They stayed embraced for a long time, watching the sun set through the leaves of the century-old fig tree. Finally, the ghosts of the past had been laid to rest. Finally, they were free to love without fear. "What are we going to do now?" asked Emily. "We're going to live," replied Adam simply. "We're going to love. We're going to be happy because that's what Marie wanted. It's what you deserve. It's what I finally learned to accept that I deserve too." "And Nathan?" "Nathan will spend the rest of his life in prison, paying for the crimes he committed. Our part in this story is over." Emily nodded, feeling as if an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "So, let's go home." "Let's go home." As they walked back to the mansion, hand in hand, Emily thought about how her life had changed radically in such a short time. She had left Pine Valley as an innocent girl in search of the love from books, had been broken by a man who confused possession with passion, and now walked as a woman who had found not only love but also her own strength. Adam was also transformed. He was no longer the haunted man who had returned to the farm to symbolically die. He was someone who had rediscovered hope, who had learned that it was possible to love again without losing himself in the process. 6 months later, they married in a simple ceremony in the garden of the Hastings farm, with only the closest friends present. Emily wore a dress she had chosen herself, white and simple, that made her feel beautiful without ostentation. Adam was elegant as always, but there was a lightness in his smile that hadn't existed before. Mrs. Jenkins cried throughout the ceremony, happy to see the Hastings house full of life and love again. The pastor who married them was the same one who had married Adam and Marie years before, and he commented afterward that he had never seen a couple more determined to make the marriage work. For their honeymoon, they traveled to Europe, visiting the places Emily had dreamed of knowing through books. Adam delighted in seeing her joy at each new discovery, and Emily loved seeing how he allowed himself to be spontaneous, how he relaxed when he was away from the pressures of business and painful memories. When they returned to the United States, they decided to keep the farm as their main residence, but Emily insisted on transforming part of the property into a cultural center for the region. They wanted that place, which had seen so much pain, to become a symbol of renewal and hope. The first project was a community library installed in the former employee's house, renovated and equipped with thousands of books donated by collectors from all over the country. Emily became the project coordinator, finally realizing her dream of working with literature in a way that really made a difference in people's lives. Adam, in turn, discovered he had a talent for philanthropy. He created a support fund for women, victims of domestic violence, offering not only temporary shelter, but also professional training and psychological support. It was his way of honoring Marie's memory and helping other women escape destructive relationships. Nathan was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Marie Hastings and the attempted murder of Emily. During the trial, 3 other women came forward to report similar abuse they had suffered, and he was also convicted of these crimes. He would never again be a threat to anyone. On their second wedding anniversary, Emily discovered she was pregnant. The news made them radiant and terrified at the same time, but this time the fear was normal, healthy, the kind of anxiety all expectant parents feel. Marie Sophia. Hastings was born on a spring morning, crying with enough force to wake the entire house. Adam held his daughter in his arms and cried without shame, finally experiencing the fatherhood that had been stolen from him years ago. "She has your eyes," said Emily, observing father and daughter with a love that overflowed. "And your determination," replied Adam, laughing when the baby grabbed his finger with surprising strength. She's going to be a force of nature. They had decided to name the girl in honor of Marie, a way to ensure that Adam's first wife would always be remembered with affection, not as a shadow from the past, but as part of the story that had led them to each other. In the girls' room, Emily framed the last page of Marie's diary, the one that talked about going through fire to deserve the light. It was a constant reminder that true love is always worth the fight, always deserves whatever sacrifice is necessary. On a Sunday afternoon, 3 years after the wedding, Emily was in the garden reading to Marie Sophia, who now walked with stumbling but determined steps when Adam arrived from the office with a strange expression on his face. "I received a letter," he said, handing the envelope to her. The sender made her freeze for a moment. "Maximum security prison of Danbury. Nathan." Emily hesitated before opening it, but decided she would no longer let that man exercise any power over her life, not even the power of fear. The letter was brief. "Emily, I know you didn't expect to hear from me, but I needed to write this before I die. The doctors say I have cancer, that I only have a few months left. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it, and you wouldn't give it. I'm writing to tell you that you won. You achieved something I thought impossible. You transformed your pain into strength, your fear into courage, your fragility into power. I spent years trying to break women because I thought it would make me feel powerful. But you taught me that true power is in rebuilding yourself, not in destroying others. You found your happy ending. I hope it's lasting. Nathan." Emily folded the letter and handed it to Adam, who read it in silence. When he finished, they looked at each other, and both knew that finally, definitely, that chapter of their lives was closed. "How do you feel?" asked Adam. "Free," replied Emily without hesitation, "completely free." That night, after Marie Sophia fell asleep, they walked to the century-old fig tree, where everything had begun and ended. The tree remained imposing, its leaves whispering ancient secrets to the night wind. "Do you regret anything?" asked Adam, embracing Emily from behind. "The time we lost before we met," she replied, leaning back against his chest. "Otherwise, no. Not even the pain, because it was what brought me to you." "I don't regret anything either," said Adam, kissing the top of her head. "Not even the years of suffering, because they prepared me to value what we have now." They stayed there for a long time in silence, listening to the sounds of the night and feeling the deep peace of those who had fought for their happiness and won. The surrounding forest seemed to bless that moment, as if nature itself recognized that here was a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger. When they returned to the house, Marie Sophia was awake in her crib, looking at them with curious and intelligent eyes. Emily picked her up and the three stayed there, a family created not only by blood, but by choice, by love, by the determination to build something beautiful on the ruins of the past. "What do you think she'll be when she grows up?" asked Emily. "Anything she wants," replied Adam, "but I'm sure she'll be strong like her mother, and kind like her father." They laughed, and Marie Sophia smiled as if she understood she was being raised by people who knew the value of love, who knew the difference between possessing and loving, who understood that true happiness comes from conscious choices and constant struggle. Emily looked out the window at the forest where she had been tied up, where she had discovered fear, where she had found love, where she had finally become the woman she was always meant to be. The forest was no longer a place of terror, but of transformation. It was where her story had really begun. And as she rocked her daughter to sleep, singing a lullaby that her own mother had sung to her years ago, Emily knew she had found something that Nathan could never destroy, that pain could never erase, a love that had been tested by fire and had emerged as pure gold. In the room next door, Adam was organizing work papers, but frequently stopped to listen to Emily's soft voice singing. There were moments when he still didn't completely believe in his happiness, moments when he expected to wake up and discover it was all a dream. But then he looked around, saw the tangible evidence of his new life and knew it was real. They had gone through the fire as Marie had predicted. They had fought against external and internal demons, had faced the past and won. And now they had the entire future ahead of them, a future they would build day by day with love, respect, and the certainty that they had found something rare and precious. Outside, the century-old fig tree swayed gently in the night wind, its leaves whispering stories of love and redemption to those who knew how to listen. And if anyone paid enough attention, perhaps they could also hear the echo of a joyful laugh, of a woman who had found peace, knowing that the man she loved had finally found the happiness he always deserved. Emily and Adam's story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning, because they had learned that the best happy endings are those that are earned, not given, and they were willing to earn their happiness every day for the rest of their lives. The next morning, when Marie-Sophia woke with the rising sun, she found her parents sleeping embraced in the armchair in her room, still dressed from the night before, smiling even in sleep. It was the perfect image of a family that had learned that true love isn't a fairy tale, but a daily choice to fight for each other's happiness. And so they lived happily ever after, not because life became easy, but because they became strong enough to face any storm together.